Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the latest episode of the Stephen King podcast. This is episode 29. And in today's episode, we are, as usual, going to be bringing you the latest news. And as well, this time, because there's so much Stephen King material being adapted for TV and movies, we decided to look up his short stories and try to pick 5 each as to which candidates we would think they would be good for making into TV. And Hans, you had a tough time getting 5?
Yeah, it was hard to find 5 that I think would last for a couple of seasons. But
yeah.
I think I got some of them.
Same here, and once you start going through the list, you realize how many of them have already been adapted. So we wanted to get new ones that hadn't been done. So yeah, it was a lot tougher than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
We're going to go through our lists, compare notes, and we also got some feedback from fans, and that should be really awesome to hear. So let's kick off episode 29. Welcome, welcome. Do not fear the door that lies before you. We will protect you. We are your guides, Hans and Lou. And we will give you the latest in Stephen King news. But before we do so, you must prove yourself worthy. You must open the door and join us in the death room.
Yes, and let's start with the news. And the first item is about John Cusack, who has been in 1408. And is starring in the upcoming Cell. And lately he's been showing some interest for Dr. Sleep. He has said on several occasions that he wants to star as the grown-up Danny Torrance and that he wants to direct. So he's being a big King fan, and I think he could pull off being a grown-up Danny. What do you think?
Absolutely. He's an actor that I've always really liked, and even though he's done a few King roles now, I'm not tired of him yet. Like I have become tired with some of the actors that were doing a lot of the TV miniseries back in the 90s and that. So I think he could do a good job. I wasn't aware that he was interested in directing, but that would be kind of cool. But yeah, I could see him as an older version of Danny from The Shining for sure.
Yeah. Only problem might be if he's in too many King movies that are released too tight, that at least for us King fans who watch them in a special way, that there might be too much John Cusack. Not that it's not good, but there might be too much in too a short time frame.
Exactly. But I mean, that's just his wish. There's no official deal or anything in place, but no. I wouldn't mind seeing him play Danny, an adult Danny for sure. I think he could do it quite well.
Yeah.
All right, our next item is the first photo from Cell. Actually, I think this is the second one. Oh, with all the foreign main characters, sorry. We saw one a couple of weeks ago with Samuel L. Jackson getting out of a car or something. And now we've got one with the 4 main cast members, John Cusack, Samuel Jackson, Isabel Furman, and Owen Teague. And it must be cold because they're all wearing toques and coats.
Yeah. And I don't know, maybe the first photo we saw of Samuel was actually a behind-the-scenes photo. I'm not sure that was from the actual movie, so this might be the first one. Yeah. And it actually doesn't say much. It's just they're just looking at something. So it's a photo, but it doesn't reveal that much.
No.
Okay, next up. The Stand is yet again getting a new director, it seems. A lot of directors have come and gone, and this time it's Josh Bone who might direct the movie. He's directed The Fault in Our Stars, and, well, I don't know that much about him, but it seems kind of annoying that they are changing directors so often. It can't be good for a movie, right?
I think it's such a big project, and the problem is, once it's almost like with The Hobbit, with Guillermo del Toro and Peter Jackson, if they take too long to get going, directors and actors and that, they can't sit around waiting for a project to come together.
Yeah.
If it doesn't happen within a certain time frame, and then they have to move on. And I think that's what's happened with these other directors to a certain degree. Maybe they got to a point where they said they meet with the studio and they realize what the studio wants and what they want is to do is different, so they just decide to part ways. But a lot of times, I think with these projects like The Stand and The Dark Tower, they're not moving very quickly, so these people just can't sit around and wait for that to come together. If something else comes up in the interim, they have to take it. So hopefully he will be the director for this one, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's just another link in a chain.
Yeah, and you got to wonder why they don't get it off the ground. Like it seems to be something they want to do, so why not get it off?
It seems even more relevant today than before. So, and with the special effects, they could really make it a lot more epic than they could do with the TV series. So, I think maybe that's part of the problem. It's the cost. They're coming to grips with how much exactly they want to spend on it, because most of the successful franchise stuff nowadays in theaters is comic book movies, and this is kind of outside that purview. So, it might not be. They might want to do it, but they want to do it in a way that they feel that they can make money, and they're trying to come to terms with budget versus what think they're going to make on the movies.
Yeah.
Alrighty. One of our favorite things. Just letting everybody know that Under the Dome has started filming, probably by now, probably last Monday. Today is...
No, it's actually starting tomorrow.
Oh, starting tomorrow. Okay, so starts filming tomorrow. Today is March 2nd.
Yeah.
Well, what can we say? This is tweeted by the lead actor, Mike Vogel, who plays Barbie. So we wish them well. I guess Stephen King must be there. He's wrote the script. I don't know if he's not directing, is he?
I'm not sure actually how he involved. I know we were there quite a lot in season 1, but I don't know how much he's going to be there now in season 2.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about the changes with the new cast additions and that, and Stephen King right in the first episode, and the series is going to depart even further from the book. That's probably put up a lot of red flags for a lot of people, because they already didn't like the changes that they made. But I don't know, at this point, really, I don't really think they have a choice but to deviate from the book. So we'll have to see how it plays out. But yeah, season 2, it's happening.
Sherry Springfield has been casted. We know her from ER TV series from some years ago, and I actually liked her there. So maybe she can bring something to the story. I don't know.
I don't know anything about her.
No, you didn't watch ER?
No, not my kind of show.
Okay. Okay, last movie news for today is that Mercy, which is the movie version of Grandma. Yeah, I know, it's pretty strange, but it is. Seems to be done and just sitting on the shelf waiting for a release. And no one knows why it's not being released. Probably they don't think it will make that much money, and maybe they will release it just for DVD directly. But I've never understood why, when a studio have a finished movie, why just don't put it out there, even if they doesn't have the money to do a big promotion and stuff. And so get it out there, let it make some money back. I don't know, it won't make money if it's just laying there on the shelf. So
yeah, it's kind of weird, because there's been some horror movies out, like The Conjuring and things like that, last couple of months, to have done fairly well on small budgets. The part of the problem here is, I don't know if the studio that made this is looking for distribution, and I think that's the issue. They don't have the distribution to get it out to the theaters. They're looking for one of the studios to carry those costs. I guess they've been shopping it around, and no studio has bitten on it. So I mean, it's got a fairly strong cast. Dylan McDermott, Frances O'Connor, Chandler Riggs, Joel Courtney, Shirley Knight, Chris Browning. I guess they just don't feel it's got enough commercial appeal to it to make any money. So
and that's quite alarming, I think, because you have Stephen King, he can sell anything. You have Chandler Riggs from The Walking Dead, which is pretty much the biggest TV show on right now, and they still don't think it's good enough.
Yeah.
So that makes me think that the story itself is maybe not so good.
Quite possible, but I mean, with a cast that strong, it's hard to believe that it could be super bad. But that's too bad. Hopefully, it will come out in some form. I'm sure it'll end up on Netflix or something like that if it doesn't get released theatrically. So which is fine with me, because a lot of horror I prefer to watch at home anyhow. So
as long as we can see it, I don't really care. So.
That takes care of the movie news. Now we're going back to the books. Back to the books, folks. And our first bit of book news is a book cover for Mr. Mercedes, but this time it's the UK version. And we had already seen the US version, which was the very cool umbrella with the blood rain and the eerie, unnerving happy face sticker on the handle. And here we have in the UK one, which is a dynamic title, which is cool. You have the rain falling, and there's a sea of umbrellas at a red stoplight, and one of them's blue. So,
Yeah.
What do you think of this one, Hans?
I like it. I haven't decided if I like this one or the US the best. I think they both have advantages. So for once, I'm torn between them. I usually can pick one cover between the UK and the US pretty fairly easy. But this time I'm not sure. I think it's safe to say though that the blue umbrella will have some big part in the story.
Yep, just like the Steam did on the cover of Dr. Sleep.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out what that was. But I like the US cover better just because that happy face sticker just really freaks me out.
Yeah.
But this is pretty evocative and atmospheric as well. So, and plus the fact that the rain is actually moving on the cover is kind of cool. I don't think they'll sell the book like that, but maybe the ebook will have that.
Yeah.
But it's a pretty cool cover, and again, like the color scheme with that one blue umbrella and a sea of black is pretty cool.
Yeah, I like the fact that it indicates that in the story there is someone that's going to be in between everyone else.
Yeah.
Without standing out too much and
the same but slightly different.
Yeah. Next up is something called The Ring, and that is the title of a new essay King has written, and this one will be published in Tin House issue 59, volume 15, number 3. The theme for this issue is memory, and Stephen's essay, who is only 2 pages long, is about the wedding rings and the day he got married. So that could be an interesting read.
Yeah.
There's no date for the release yet, so I am not sure when it's being released, but it shouldn't be too far away, I think.
Yeah, probably their spring issue.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're published quarterly or not, but probably in the next month or two. And geez, I wonder if he'll talk about cause a wheel or something like that. I don't know. Wedding rings and that stuff. Who knows? But it might be just a fairly straightforward appreciation piece to his wife. So he might reference some of his fiction. Who knows? But it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Alrighty, what do we got next? Let's see. Carrie. 40th anniversary. You know, these dates are just killing me. The book was 40 years old, and I read it when it came out, so that just really dates me. And this one is from PS Publishing, and on the front cover you can see her hometown is up in flames, and she's on the back cover. It's a back shot of her, or a back drawing, and there's it looks like a church or something, or the courthouse, or maybe it's a church, and there's trees with no leaves and that, and she's just standing on this empty street. So it's a pretty cool cover.
Yep. From
PS Publishing, and they're a UK publisher, I believe.
Yeah.
The cover art is by Glenn Chadbourne, if you have any sort of Stephen King collectibles. He's done a lot of artwork for a lot of other projects, Stephen King projects as well. So you can check that out, and there's some plates inside the book as well, drawings of Carrie and her mother, and various other things. So if you're a collector and you want to get this one, it's out. What I'm seeing here says April 2014.
Okay.
Limited run, 974. So if you want to get this, you will have to go to the PS Publishing website and get your order in. I doubt if you'll find this in bookstores.
Yeah, I doubt it.
So, and based on how the other anniversary editions are going, like Cujo and Pet Sematary, you probably want to grab this up pretty quickly.
Yep. And last news, and probably the biggest news as well, is that there was some whispering on the internet at the beginning of this week that something was happening in Germany and France, and there were a French book cover that was somewhat blurred out, and what you could make out of it was some sort of what looked like a baseball hat. And to begin with, a lot of fans thought that this was just a French translation of Blockade Billy or one of the other baseball books. But as the week progressed, we learned that this was going to be something that King had written especially for the French and the German fans as a thank you for his great welcome there in November last year. And this was all revealed last Friday, and as it turns out, there is actually a book, rather a short story, published as an ebook, and this one is called I'm going to see if I can pronounce this right. Böse kleine Junge in Germany. Junge in Germany.
Junge, yeah.
Yep. And Seilguss.
That sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Or
I'm
Goss,
sorry,
maybe
I can't. I don't speak
Salé
French.
Goss? I don't know.
Yeah, it doesn't really sound like French when I say it, so I'm
No,
sorry
it doesn't.
if I pronounce it totally wrong. The English title though is Bad Little Kid.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay.
Yeah, according to King's site, Bad Little Kid is the English title. But the problem with this one is that it is not released in English. It's only released in French and in Germany. So you have to learn those languages if you want to read it now. And the synopsis reads like this. Remember, it comes back in the shape of a kid. A diabolic kid who causes an inevitable death of your relatives. A bad little kid who has led George Halas, accountant, in the death row. And that may one day cross your path. And this is a translation from the French text done by a Frenchman. So if it's not exactly the right word, so be it, but that gives you an indication of what it's about anyway. So this one is released on March 14th, 2 weeks, and only in German and French. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think it's an awesome gesture on King's part to put sort of like a cherry on the top of his European tour. I think only an author of his position and security could do something like this and make it work. I don't think an up-and-coming or a less successful writer would be able to do something like this, because he has to know that as soon as this release, somebody's going to translate it to English and it's going to get out on the internet. So that's going to undercut sales. Well, it would undercut sales if it was a regular author, but at his stage of his career, he doesn't really have to worry too much about that. But I think it's a great gesture, and I hope that the fans from both countries are very appreciative. I can wait. I assume that at some point it will be translated to English, so I don't think he'll deny his English fans too long, maybe half a year, like the way that they held off on making an ebook version of Joyland for Hard Case Crimes. They didn't release it as an ebook right away, but they did eventually.
Yeah.
So I think it's an awesome gesture, and good on him.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a great gesture as well, but I think he could have released it in English like after a week or two maybe.
Well, he might. We don't know.
Yeah, he might, but he could have said it, I think, to save some grief. I can understand that he wanted to do this to say thank you to the German and French fans. But to be honest, it wasn't just French and German fans there. I was there as well. So, and I think it would have been enough to say thank you by letting them have it first, and then we could have it like a couple of weeks after or something like that. So, but I think what's going to happen now is, because I think he should translate it fairly quick for two reasons. One is purely egocentric of me because I want to read it, and I think and I think the other one is that, as you say, as soon as this is released as an ebook, it will process through Google Translate, and then it will spread on the internet as English version of it. And we all know how Google Translate is. Well, it lacks something if you do translations. You can get an idea what text is about, but you can't get the right translation.
Yeah.
And then that means
it'll miss the personality of Stephen King.
Yeah, exactly. And we will get a translated version that a lot of English-speaking fans will read. And I think maybe they won't appreciate the story for what it is because of the bad Google translation. So I think that will hurt the story as well.
Well, and I think that anybody that reads a translated version of it like that is just, you buy something cheap, you get something cheap. If you want the full experience, you wait until it's translated or the original version is published. I assume he wrote it in English. I don't think he learned French or German to write it. But,
no.
You know, I mean, it's kind of like going out for a steak and just getting the steak with no fixings with it. If you want the flavoring and King's personality of the writing, I'm gonna wait. I'm not gonna read a Google or an English, because even if a person speaks both languages, he still doesn't write like Stephen King. He's not gonna get 100% the right word choice. It might even be two words that mean the same thing, but he might choose the wrong one. So I have no problem waiting. I mean, well, Hans, you're kind of stuck in the middle because you're always waiting until you learn to read English or got the English versions. You were always waiting for the translated versions of the book to come out.
Yeah.
And everybody across the pond has had to wait for the translated books. So in this one instance, for me and North American audiences to wait until it's translated, I don't have a problem with that at all.
No. Another thing that irritates me some is that when it was announced, a lot of fans was very upset that this was only released as an ebook. And I'm like, hey, I can't even read it. I would be happy if it was written on a toilet paper.
Well, I don't know about that. But
No, I
I
mean,
know what you mean.
yeah, I mean clean toilet paper.
Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, it's so unappreciated to complain that the story is written only as an ebook when they get a book that only a fairly small amount of the population can read. So
Because if he wanted to put out a hard copy, it would probably take twice as long for it to get out.
yeah, and I mean it's a short story. I don't know the page number, but I would guess like maybe 20, 30 pages. I mean, that's not even a book. You can hardly get a book that's small to stay together. So yeah.
Well, yeah, these situations like these are a no-win scenario because I remember we had the reverse complaint when Joyland was coming out and people said, well, why isn't it coming out on ebook?
Yeah.
So it's like you can't win, you know?
No.
So you just gotta he just gotta do what he's gotta do. This is the way he wants to release it. That he's the creator of the work. If that's how he wants it released, then we can't really argue about that. I mean, if you like something bad enough, you're going to read it, like you said, whether it's written on an ebook format or a paperback, or even if it's an audio file only. Like, what if it was audio only? What would you do?
Yeah, yeah.
You know? So, yeah, and it will come out in paper form in some other collection down the, like if he does another short story collection, it'll come out in that down the road. So, yeah, you're not going to please everybody.
No.
I can understand frustration of not getting it in your format of preference, but I mean, eventually the publishers are going to release it in every format possible because they want to get as much money as they can. Yeah. So a little bit of patience goes a long way in these cases.
Yeah. And in worst cases, you can always print it. And you
if you
have
want
a paper
to.
version of
Sure.
it to put in your bookcase if that's what you want to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Alrighty. So that is the news.
This is great. What's our job? We'd like drive around and pick up stiffs or what?
It's time for reviews from the night shift. And now we're going to move on to the main feature of the podcast. And Hans, you want to set that up for us, exactly what we're trying to do here?
We wanted to see if there were short stories that would be extra good to make TV series out, because there are a lot of TV series coming out and some of them are very strange selections in our mind to expand to an entire TV series. So we each picked our top 5 to make TV series of, and the thing we were trying to find were stories that would work as TV series, not necessarily our own personal favorites stories.
Yeah, and also material that hasn't been currently adapted.
Yeah, exactly. So the main focus was to find a story that could survive as a TV series for at least a couple of seasons, and not finding our favorite story that we wanted done as a TV series.
And each picked 5 stories?
Yeah.
You did get 5, right, Hans?
Yeah.
Okay, so do you want me to go first with my number 5?
Yeah.
Okay, my number 5 is going to be a story that was published in 1976 first in Cosmopolitan, and then it was released later as part of the Night Shift collection. And the story is called I Know What You Need. And it's a story about a woman who has a boyfriend, but she meets a nerdy guy, and they seem to strike it off, and then they get close, but then her boyfriend is killed off, and she finds out that this new guy that she met has done it through voodoo. So I think that this could be the seed of a good series. It would need to be fleshed out and changed a little bit, of course. But if we had like these possessed items or the things of that nature that were influencing people, and maybe there's a team trying to track down all these items, kind of like a Warehouse 13, but probably a little more serious, play a little more straight. There was also a show that ran for a couple of years where they had a shop where they had to retrieve items as well. So it's kind of in that same vein. So that would be my number 5 pick. I Know What You Need. I would change it to a different title, probably something about your needs or something of that nature. But yeah, that would be my number 5 pick.
Yeah, great pick. Great pick. I was actually looking at that one as well
Oh,
a little
okay.
bit. It didn't get to my top 5 though. On my spot 5 is, and that it might be a stretch, I will admit to this before I even mention the story, but I put Everything's Eventual there.
Ah,
The main character is typing stuff, doing circles and diagrams and stuff, and making things happen.
Think Earnshaw.
Yeah, thank you. And he does this for some secret organization. And I can see how that could expand, and maybe he could get different assignments for each week, and over the course of the seasons he could be more like, as he do in the story, follow up and see what's actually happening to the people he give these curses, and we can end somewhere after maybe 3 seasons with him refusing to work anymore. So it's a bit of a stretch, but could work.
Oh, that's a good pick. I didn't even have that on my list, but I like that pick a lot. My number 4 pick would be from the Skeleton Crew collection from 1985, and the story is called Nona. And again, like you, this one would need a bit of fleshing out or stretch to it. And it's kind of got that Fight Club vibe to it, in that we have a main character who's interacting with another person. In this case, it's a lonely guy, and he meets a beautiful woman, and they go on like a murder spree or something like that. And the thing is that nobody else ever sees him with this woman. So I think that this maybe would be like maybe a 1-season series or something like that, but it could be him on his crime spree going through this whole story arc with talking to this person that nobody else sees. So
yeah, I like stories that's built like that when they talk to people only they see, and it's not revealed until much later that this person doesn't exist.
Because then you have the tension of filming scenes to make sure that it doesn't, when you go back to it, that it doesn't break the illusion that he's by himself. So
yeah,
that would be kind of cool. Kind of like Fight Club sort of thing.
Yeah. And at the end of the season, they can always go back and show those scenes again without her being seen, and explain how it was done. Yeah, great pick. My number 4 is also a long shot, but I picked Popsy, who was in Nightmares and Dreamscapes, and this is about a little boy who's being kidnapped by someone with gambling debts, who kidnaps this boy to pay his debts, and the boy keeps saying that his Popsy will come and save him, and the kidnapper takes it to be his father or grandfather or something like that. And so far it's true, with the exception that Popsy is actually a vampire who actually comes for the kid and kills the kidnapper. And I would like to see this done like like some kind of family drama with his kid and his Popsy, and see their lifespan over a couple of seasons, and how they drift through the US, and how maybe, because the kid seems to be a non-vampire, seems to be a real kid, and then you have this grandfather who's a vampire, and how they struggle to survive, and getting food for the grandfather. I think it could work.
Yeah, possible. My number 3 pick would be, I picked it more for the title because the storyline's actually pretty generic in some ways, but I just like the title. It would be from 1978's Night Shift, Strawberry Spring. And this resolves about a series of murders on a college campus in Maine. So there's a lot of series on TV right now where they're trying to find a murder of a bunch of people and things like that. We just had one with David Tennant. I can't remember the name of the title with it now. It started with a B. We also got True Detective. We've had The Killing, series like that. So this would be a pretty conventional story in that perspective, but I think that it set this up to be a very doable and easy to make TV series, at least for a season or two. Yeah.
Would you follow it from the killer's perspective or from the cops?
I think you follow it from the police perspective.
Yep.
Because knowing who the murderer is, those stories can work, but over a series, I think it's better if they keep his or their identity hidden. But I don't know. It's been done both ways. The Columbo approach is interesting too, but I find that works better for a movie rather than a series. So
Yeah. Strawberry Spring was actually mentioned by one of our readers on Facebook
oh,
as well. Yeah.
all right.
Okay, my number 3 is I guess pronounced.
Oh yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure that this is actually going to be appreciated by the hardcore fans, because I don't think it will have that much to do with King's original story. But I mean, if you have someone who has a pink Kindle that can read newspapers from I don't know how many dimensions and future and the past, and I mean, you gotta be able to fill like 2 or 3 or maybe 4 seasons with the stuff from that.
Yeah.
So I think that could work, but it would be more like Haven, that the story itself would be more like a springboard for the rest
Yeah.
of the seasons.
Well, especially if you could work it in that when he actually read this thing, somehow he could actually enter that reality.
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
something like that.
exactly.
It'd be kind of like a time tunnel sliders
Yeah,
kind of series. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
yeah,
Definitely. And I think you're going to see as we get into our higher stories, maybe we're going to get more of a science fiction bent here. But my
Yeah.
number 2 story, and this one would need a bit of work as well, but it's from Skeleton Crew, and it's called The Jaunt. And this is a story that deals about a family that in the future they have sort of a transportation system that's a lot like the transporters on Star Trek. And in that story, what happens is that one of the children is locked into the system for a certain time period, and when he comes out, he's really aged and all that. But I think if you could change the story slightly and have them jump to some place where they're lost, or maybe it's another parallel dimension kind of thing, or alternate realities, and the series is about them trying to get back home again. So
Yeah, that could definitely work. My number 2 is Omni's Last Case.
that's been done, but okay.
Yeah, kind of. It was just one episode of Nightmares and Dreamscape, so I didn't really count that. So, because I think that it's a detective story and it's 50s, and I mean, it could be how many cases for the detective, and I think they can make it work. And as he's coming from the future as well, you can always spin on that at the news what's going to happen in the future. And I don't know, did you see the TV series Life on Mars?
Yes.
Yeah,
the British one.
Yeah, and there you have the same, that he's transported to the 70s and he knows what's going to happen in the future. So I think that could be an advantage, and you can do all kind of spin-offs on that one.
Yeah, there's lots of ways. Like a detective it's a staple on TV. You could do a lot of spins on that. You could make him kind of like a Kolchak, the Night Stalker, where he's tracking down supernatural things all the time, or you could make it kind of like if you've read the Harry Dresden series by Jim Butcher, where he's a wizard detective.
Yeah.
Very cool series. But yeah, there's a lot of directions that you could go with that for sure.
Yeah.
Good choice. Good pick. All right. So now to our number 1s. And again, this is a story that apparently has never been published, and it was written in 1979, and it's called Mobius. This is a story about time travel. So a young man is called to a laboratory, and he gets involved with this time machine, and they use the machine, and out comes this older, big man, fat guy, and turns out that it's him from the future. So there's a whole bunch of different ways that they could go with this, and the young guy, maybe his only goal is to exercise so that he doesn't end up big and fat at the end of the series. I don't know, but anything with time travel, it's kind of like a quantum leap. It has possibilities, quantum leap sort of possibilities, time tunnel, continuum, lots of futuristic time travel types of shows. So I think that could be the springboard to a good series as well.
Yeah, and what about if the younger version and the bigger, older version work together?
That would be really cool too. Yeah.
Solve crime
what
or
was that
something
movie that was just out last year with Bruce Willis? Time travel movie, kind of the same ideal, and Gordon Levitt played his younger version. So
Yeah.
But in that movie, they were against each other. So yeah, it'd be interesting to have a series where an older and a younger version of the same character had to work with each other to solve a problem.
Yeah, and you can spin a lot
Cool.
of that by the older version and being annoyed about the stuff that the younger himself doing and stuff like that. So yeah, that's a great pick.
Thank you.
Yeah, my number one is something called Graduation Afternoon that you can find in Just After Sunset. And this is we follow a family when they celebrate one of their kids' graduation. And as they celebrate, this is a very short story, but as they are celebrating, they are out in the lawn and they see the atomic bomb going off in the distance, and they see this mushroom cloud.
Yeah, that would be a short story.
Yeah.
or is that the beginning of your post-apocalyptic story?
Yeah, exactly. That's the beginning.
Oh, okay.
And of course, there's the story ends. But the TV series could spin off. They could maybe have a shelter down below where they have some things to save, protect themselves, and they could go out in this nuked world, and they can see mutants and they can see everything, and just trying to survive after the big blast.
Right.
I think you could spin off. And if by say end of season two, the stories are thinning out, you can always do flashbacks to before the disaster happened and show what happened then. So you have another season. So at least 3 seasons.
There you go. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so we did have some listener feedback as well. And before we do that, I just want to do 2 picks that I didn't mention because they've already been adapted. And I know that the movie version wouldn't work the way it was filmed, but if they went back to the original short story, I'd still love to see a series based on The Mist. With them traveling across the country, trying to find a safe spot. And also Night Flyer, I think, would make a great TV series as well. So
I actually had Night Flyers as well, but I thought that was too much adapted compared to Amnesty Last Case.
Right.
Definitely, and it's interesting to see that how in all our picks, almost all our picks, destruction, the world is going under and stuff. Those are the stories that works for a TV series. It's interesting.
Yeah. Well, just from a dramatic perspective, when things are at their worst is when people have to make the toughest choices.
Yeah.
And they're at their best. So,
yeah.
Or can be at their best. They can also be at their worst. But those stories are just, those kind of settings just offer so many dramatic possibilities that you don't get with a regular day-to-day world stuff. So.
Yeah. The only day-to-day that would have been in our picks are Popsy, who would have been a family drama for Vampire and and his grandchildren.
Yeah, and the vampire shows are almost mainstream nowadays, so
yeah, would probably be in like a sitcom.
Yeah. So we're just going through the list of questions here and our responses, and I see Bryant Burnett has a couple of picks that we mentioned. Strawberry Spring.
Yeah.
He also has I'm the Doorway. I had considered that one, but I never did pick that. Trucks. Is that Maximum Overdrive?
Yeah, it was filmed as Maximum Overdrive, and then you had the TV version called Trucks.
Children of the Corn. Ooh.
I don't know how they could make that into a TV series.
Yeah, and they've made so many bad movies, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I should say that because we've got a question coming up that touches on that. So, but Children of the Corn could work.
Yeah, but I think it would be a disaster based on the fact that it has so many bad movies. But I think people would think that it would be a bad series before they even saw it.
It would be a tough sell for sure.
Yeah.
But I never thought that Hannibal was going to be a good series.
Yeah.
Because that character had kind of been milked out, and the last couple of movies hadn't been that great. But the TV series is fantastic, so.
Yeah.
There you go. You never know.
You never know.
You just never know. And he also mentioned the breathing method, and the man who would not shake hands. And those, I don't know how many headless deliveries you could have.
At least 2 per season.
Yeah. But yeah, those would be more like anthology type episodes to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it would be a tough sell for network.
Who we got else here? Peter Hansen.
Yeah.
Big Driver.
That's the one with a driver who attacks the woman, right?
I think so. I don't remember the story.
Not sure how that would survive for several seasons, though. But
Yeah.
Maybe as a movie.
And I had as a
Yeah.
on my short list as well, because that whole other dimension kind of thing could be handled in a way that it's not as overpowering as it was to this guy, and maybe he could be like in a battle to keep this portal from opening or something like that, or
Yeah.
trying to find a way to close it permanently. So
Yeah.
I definitely could see that happening.
Yeah.
I see he mentions
Yeah.
which you had mentioned. And he also mentions a breathing
Yeah.
method and the man who would not shake hands. Interesting. And the library policeman, I actually had that as on my short list as well. I think that's a cool story where if you don't return your
Yeah.
library books, you're killed. I think you could, with some changes to it, that could be an interesting scenario as well. Some sort of future totalitarian society thing where any small infraction results in the
I think
death
they would.
penalty or something like that. So
Yeah,
that
they
one
would
has
probably have
possibilities
to
as well.
expand it from being just being late with the books, because I mean, you can't have some
Oh yeah,
character being late with a book in each episode.
yeah. But that could be like their
Yeah.
nickname, because
Yeah.
maybe that's
Sure.
where it started with, and then they expanded it into other things afterwards.
Yeah.
But they still call them the library policeman or something.
Yeah.
That would be good. That would be interesting. Kind of like a the original RoboCop, black
Yeah.
dark future kind of thing. And what else we got here?
We have Peter Dichette
Desist. Yep.
suggests Annie's Last Case, who we mentioned as well. So
As so did Stephen Williamson.
yeah.
And Survivor Type, yeah, that is a great anthology series
Yeah.
type of episode.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. That would be kind of cool to see that. That would make a good episode for The Walking Dead, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Zombies start
Yeah,
eating themselves or something.
Yeah. It's a great story, but it has its limitations when it comes to having a longer series, because I mean,
Right.
how much can you eat of yourself?
Yeah, and then we have a couple of comments from Brigitte Champagne. I hope I'm saying your names, and if we've mispronounced anybody's name during this episode, please forgive us. Names are of the hardest things to pronounce right if you don't know the person.
Yep.
She has 2 suggestions, both novellas from Full Dark No Stars, Big Driver, and A Good Marriage. Big Driver, we've already talked about. A Good Marriage, it's being made into a movie.
Yeah.
Or it's already been filmed actually, but I could see that playing like as a 1-season series kind of thing. I don't think you could drag that out more than one, but
No.
definitely you could really get into exploring the characters in a miniseries.
Yeah, as you mentioned, HBO, like a 12 episode,
Yeah.
1 season. Yeah, I think that could work.
Alrighty, and she's put a question down here too that's a little more general and outside of what we're talking about, but I've seen this kind of point brought up or question raised before, so I think it's worthy of us to discuss it at this time as well. So Hans, do you want me to read the question or do you want to do it?
You can do it.
Okay, here we go. Bridget talks about the fact that a great deal of King's work has been adapted to either film or TV. And she wants to know, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Because when you get the good stuff like Shawshank Redemption, The Green Mile, Stand By Me, Misery, and the underrated Dreamcatcher, I don't know about that, but so that's of course is great, but when it's poorly done, like Children of the Corn episode 25 or whatever, they're awfully cheesy and they don't do the original story justice. There's a lot of stuff from the 80s and 90s, and she wants to chalk those up to being because of the limitations of special effects, etc. And with the lack of originality in Hollywood these days, everything is either adapted from previously written works or are remakes of already loved classics, though the remake of Carrie was pretty good in my opinion. While I think that the good adaptations of King's work add to the experience of the original story, sometimes I just want the story to remain just that. Curious to know our opinions. What do you think about all of that, Hans?
First, I'm gonna use a quote from King, actually.
Mm-hmm.
The story is still there, as he used to say. The book is still there, no matter if they do a good movie, a bad movie, or no movie.
Yep.
The book is still there, and the story is still there as he wrote it. So you can always choose to read the book and not see the movie, or see the movie and still read the book. So that is still there. But I have to say that I rather take 10 bad movies to get one good, instead of not getting any movies just to avoid the bad ones. So, and I think that looking back at the 80s and 90s, I agree, most of them are pretty cheesy today, but you have to judge them from when they were released. I mean, the movies that are done today that are stunning are probably going to feel pretty cheesy in, like, say, 20 years down the road. So you have to judge them from when they were done. But I think it's basically it's good that they are trying to make movies. Sometimes you can expect the movie to be bad before you even see it.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you're right, and sometimes they surprise you. What I don't like when you get like Children of the Corn 6 and 7, and it's so obviously that they just do it because they can and because they know that Stephen King's name sell. And those movies that has only Stephen King's name and has nothing to do with the story itself that it's supposed to be based on, those I think we could live without. But otherwise, I think it's a good thing that they try. And as I said, if I get 10 bad movies and one good movie, it'll be worth it.
Yeah, it's going to be up to personal preferences to a large degree, but I agree with you that King's quote about even if the movie's bad, the book is still there on the shelf. It hasn't changed.
Yeah.
Whatever you liked about the book is still exists. I do agree that a lot of the movies from the 80s and 90s don't hold up or never really held up, but they were made more to sell off of King's popularity at the time. The limitations of the technology obviously make a lot of those movies seem really cheesy now. And that's just a function of progress. Because I know for me, I constantly run into the issue of one of my all-time favorite horror movies is John Carpenter's The Thing. And that movie is full of practical effects. And I know when younger people watch that movie, they laugh at it because it looks cheesy. But I remember that movie scaring everything out of me. So,
yeah.
And I still love it. I think the special effects in that movie are awesome. I love those practical effects. Do they look as good as computer effects? Not all the time, but they're pretty amazing, I think. Maybe they look like effects, unfortunately. But yeah, that's just a movie that time has moved on from. But I just recently watched the so-called prequel sequel, which was named The Thing again, which is really confusing.
Yeah.
And I prefer the John Carpenter version effects over the CGI effects in that movie because it was just, and I guess time has passed too for me, and I don't get as freaked out by that as I used to when I was younger. But
no,
and I don't agree. I hear this a lot. There's another podcast or videocast I listen to, and they podcast every day. It's called the AMC Movie Talk Show, and they always get a question like this a lot too about the lack of originality in Hollywood and remakes and sequels and so forth. But really, they're a small percentage of everything that's released within a given year. It's just that they get all the publicity because they're usually the big releases and they're better known, but they still comprise like a small percentage of the total number of movies that are made. But the problem is that these are the ones that make the money. And if people are getting tired of remakes, then they should stop going to see remakes and go watch original material. So it's out there. You just have to look for it.
Yeah, I think that one thing that, and especially with King, is that if there is a book that the movie is based on, you are almost always going to be somewhat disappointed.
Yeah, the only exception for me is The Shawshank Redemption. I think the movie's better than the short story.
Yeah, but that's very that doesn't happen very often.
No, it's very rare.
Because you read the book and you probably like the book and you imagine things to be like they are, and you can't, if you have a longer Stephen King book, you can't do that as a 1 hour or 1.5 hour or 2 hour movie. You're gonna have to leave stuff out, and so I think I would love to see Stephen do a original movie. I know he did Sleepwalkers, which
Storm of the Century.
Yeah, and I think basically the stories are pretty good, even though maybe Sleepwalkers didn't turn out all that good when it was filmed. But I think the story is interesting, and if you could do a story and get it done right, I think that would be the ultimate Stephen King movie.
Yeah.
You don't have those expectations from a book. You have to take it as it is, and I think that would be great.
The thing too with horror movies, they're probably the hardest movies to make from not from a cost point of view, because horror movies are actually pretty cheap and they usually get a fairly good return, which is why we get all these slasher movies, the Jason movies and Saw movies and things like that. But those are kind of like the subgenre of slasher, low end of the horror movies. But to make a really good, dramatic, scary horror movie is really hard. And to get it right the first time, it's a lot of luck a lot of times. And that's why horror movies get remade so often, because it's really hard to make them scary. You really have to get people to buy into the concept. And that's not easy to do. And Stephen King says his favorites, I remember him saying his favorite stories that he writes is when he takes you through a story and at some parts through the story you realize, oh, I've moved from reality into fiction. And he says the better he can, the more seamless he can make that transition from the real world into the fictional world, where you start getting into the horror, supernatural elements. Those are the best stories. And that's really hard to do in a movie because you're limited on time, for one thing.
Yeah.
And people are they're going into a movie expecting it to be a horror movie. So whatever you show them, they're going to, in the back of their mind, it's like a video game. You get killed, you just start playing over again because you're not actively in danger in those experiences. So that's why there's so many bad adaptations of not just Stephen King's stories, but horror movies in general. But when somebody gets one right, that can be an intense experience. So
yeah,
I think it's worth the gambles to, like you said, I'd rather have 10 bad attempts and to get to that one good attempt than just one attempt, which probably is doomed to fail anyhow. So yeah. That's a great question, and I want to thank you for that, Bridget. And also we want to thank the rest of our listeners who gave us feedback, Bryant, Peter, and Stephen. Thank you very much. 2 Peters, actually. And thank you very much for your suggestions, all great suggestions. And the surprising thing for me was I've just gotten used to how many of Stephen King's stories have been adapted for TV series or movies. And when you start going through his body of work now, the bones have been picked pretty clean.
Yeah, that's why the new stuff sells so quickly to the movies.
Yeah,
I think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Very good. You got anything to add, Hans?
No, I think we covered that pretty well. I hope we didn't confuse Bridget more than we clarified.
So, who knows? Will we see more TV shows? I feel like we've proven that the chances of a lot more series coming down the road are not going to be that great unless King writes a whole bunch of short stories. And he has done that, but they've been pretty specific anthology type stories, so I don't see a lot of jumping off points for TV series with any of his recent stuff.
And I wish if there's more TV series, I'm hoping for HBO or Showtime, and I think they succeed better with TV shows than many other channels.
Or even Netflix or Amazon. They're all new avenues for there's more opportunities for this kind of work to get out there for sure, but we'll have to see. That wraps up this show. Why don't you set up the next one for us, Hans?
Yeah, we are going to continue this TV series talk, and we are going to watch Kingdom Hospital, which is based on a Danish TV series called Riket, which translates to Kingdom. And Steven did his own interpretation of this. We've seen the Danish version, and well, there are similarities, but they are maybe not as clear as... It's not a remake, I would say.
Mm.
It is a remake, but it's Stephen King's version more than just following the original. So we are going to watch that and review and talk about that. So hopefully you will join us and send in comments, thoughts, questions, whatever about it.
Donations.
And any other questions. Donations, exactly.
Use that PayPal link. Don't be afraid. We really appreciate your support.
Yeah, we need it to keep all the older episodes afloat. So if you can donate $1 or $2, that would be much appreciated.
Mm-hmm.
So do that. Donate one. Learn German and French so you can read a new story and watch Kingdom Hospital. Until next time.
Yeah, I'm going to have to watch 2 versions maybe. If I can find the Danish version, that would be an interesting comparison. For sure.
Yeah.
But that's it for the show, folks. So I hope you enjoyed it. And remember, stay safe, but
stay scared.